I am the author of various books, including this one, which I just published in February, Intact. I'm going to start by reading a little bit from this book, and then I'm going to connect those remarks to our concept of freedom from a philosophical perspective. So the topic of my talk is freedom, choice, and the unmodified body. Your body is never good enough. Sometimes you know this because you're told so. You need to lose weight, says your mother, your doctor, a public health campaign. Is your body beach ready? A billboard demands. The question is rhetorical. The only answer it will accept is no. Sometimes you know this by osmosis. Streaming selfies seep into your subconscious. Appearance anxiety hangs in the air. Everyone is judging, critiquing, shaming. It doesn't seem to matter if the target is your own body or someone else's. The process is the same. Every body is wrong. No body feels right. Sometimes you receive a compliment. I like your hair. Have you lost weight? Nice ass. It's always nice to be appreciated, but these compliments, are they all they seem to be? Why do they leave you feeling worse? Why don't they dispel the feeling that something about you needs to change? Distress about our bodies has reached epidemic levels, exacerbated by social media and selfie culture. Our bodies are always under surveillance, must always be camera ready, only now the camera always lies. No image is left unfiltered, no photo is left unshopped. The ultimate act of courage is to post with no makeup. Sometimes we change the image, sometimes we change the body itself. Body modifications, once thought extreme, are now mainstream. Cosmetic surgery reaches more people and sculpts more body parts than ever before. Body modifications, once thought countercultural, are now simply cultural. Piercings and tattoos are no longer just for goths, punks, and sailors. Last week, my mom got an actual tattoo, tweeted at Joe Moore in 2019. I'm still in shock. Important deets. 1, she's been drunk twice ever. 2, she thinks crap is quite a bad swear word. 3, she got the tattoo on a Women's Institute coach trip to Chester. 4, it's of a ball of wool and knitting needles. And that tweet has been like 32,000 times, and she's replied to it with a picture of her mum and the tattoo, so it's a real thing. So body modifications, once thought outlandish, no longer cause the bat of a westernized eyelid. They seem unremarkable, even inevitable. There's a brisk market in injecting botulinum toxin, an actual poison, into your face. Or you could have a vampire facial, which also involves injecting things into your face. This time it's platelets extracted from your own blood. Surgeries that were unheard of relatively recently are now familiar to all of us. Labiaplasty, buttock enlargements. In the late 20th century, you wanted small buttocks and no one would mention your labia. In the 21st century, you want large buttocks, small labia, and everybody's talking. Many women will try any diet, exercise, or device that promises to help them get their body back after pregnancy. I googled "get your body back" and found over 5 billion results. The very first was a personal trainer offering 13 ways to get your body back after giving birth. Okay, here they are. There's 13. If you want to take notes, go ahead. Number 1, cut out sugar. Number 2, drink lots of water with fresh lemon. Number 3, use a smaller plate. Number 4, slow down. This one, it's not by sitting on the sofa and having a rest with your baby, you understand, but during meal times. Eat with chopsticks or scale down the size of your utensils. Use a small fork and a teaspoon, for example. Number 5, no white bread, rice, flour, or pasta. Number 6, eat soup for dinner for at least 3 nights in a row. With a teaspoon, presumably. Although the chopsticks would make it even slower, yes. You're paying attention, well done. Number 7, avoid red meat. Number 8, eat the rainbow. Every plate should resemble a pride flag. Number 9, prepare for eating carrots, celery, peppers, etc. in advance. We're not talking mental preparation here. You don't have to sort of psych yourself up to crudité, right? We're talking chopping and bagging. 10, eat a cup of Cheerios or Chex if you need a snack. It's surprising, this one. It's something to do with gluten or whatever. 11, sorry, there's 13. I told you, we're on 11. 11, do not sit and eat while watching TV. 12, get off your butt, get moving, and challenge yourself to break a serious sweat at least 5 days a week for an hour. Okay, and then the final one, and here the irony is almost overpowering. 13, breathe, relax, and let go. Now, it's not just personal trainers offering advice either. The third result for Get Your Body Back was the mainstream medical advice website WebMD. Dedication and patience are key to losing postpartum baby weight and looking like your pre-baby self again, it instructs. So in this quest to get your body back, which body should you be aiming for? Where along the journey from birth to old age should your body be suspended? Which body should be reclaimed? The very idea of getting your body back suggests there was one moment when you had the body that was naturally, really, authentically yours. On this understanding, our real bodies are not the saggy, stretchy, lumpy, wrinkly ones we somehow find ourselves in. When women try to get their bodies back, they're usually aiming for the post-pubescent, pre-pregnancy body, a body that exists for perhaps 10 or 20 years of the average woman's 83 years of life. Somehow that minority body becomes not just the ideal body, but the authentic body, the one that most accurately characterizes who you really are inside. In this narrative, the body must constantly be modified to remain true to itself. But think, why on earth should that particular body, the one that has done so much less than you have, be the real you? So in this book, in Intact, A Defense of the Unmodified Body, I reclaim the value of the unmodified body. We must insist our bodies are good enough just as they are. And my argument throughout Intact is that the unmodified body is a political concept. And by a political concept, I mean that the unmodified body is not only something that exists in the world as a real material object, it is also an idea that is constructed by political processes, relations of choice and power, structures of hierarchy and equality, norms of behavior and understanding. What the body is and what modification means are matters of political significance. This is not to say there's no such thing as biology or that the body has no reality of its own. The body is a real thing, one that imposes constraints and creates possibilities. We do things to our bodies and we do things through our bodies. We live in and with them. Fundamentally, we are them. So asserting the significance of bodies is central to my argument. But the body is also the site of political meaning. It's the surface on which we're expected to inscribe our identities. Its appearance gives or denies access to positions of privilege, membership of social groups, indicators of esteem. What we look like, who we are, and how we should be treated are closely related. And the dominant message of many contemporary cultures, especially westernized capitalist cultures, is your body is not good enough. It needs to be changed so that it truly represents what you are and so that it meets standards of what you should be. So against this pressure to modify, my book, Intact, defends the unmodified body as a political principle. It emphasizes the political significance of resisting pressures to change our bodies. In some areas, I call for individual acts of resistance, but it's much more fundamentally about collective action to disrupt the social norms and structures that demand we change our bodies. It's a principle that helps us resist oppression. Now, the most obvious objection to my argument, and the one that connects us strongly to our theme here, is that body modification is a matter of individual choice. Now, in one sense, I agree. What we do with our bodies should ultimately be up to us. But I strongly resist the idea that what we do to our bodies is characteristically the result of our choices, or rather, I show how the choices we make about our bodies are inevitably situated in and shaped by our social context and the norms we find there. Our choices must react to the social structures we navigate. And these are structures of social power, and they are political. So my argument is not that individuals have a duty to resist modification, or that we do anything morally wrong if we decide to modify our bodies. My argument is much more modest, yet actually still radical. It is that the unmodified body, understood in the political sense that I lay out throughout the book, should be presumed to have value. It's very modest, but it's a very radical view, I think. So the unmodified body is not an ultimate goal. It's not a mark of perfection. It's not a standard to be measured against, not a purity to be preserved, not a badge to be earned. Whether one is permitted to remain unmodified, and the stakes of doing so, depends on where your body stands in various hierarchies. Your sex and gender, your class and profession, your race and skin color, your age and weight, your difference and disability. Prizes for remaining unmodified would be prizes for the privileged. Instead, the unmodified body is a premise. It is a foundation. The unmodified body should be defended as a default. It doesn't have overriding value. Individual bodies should not be judged for their levels of non-modification, but the principle of the unmodified body, that your body should be allowed to be good enough just as it is, that principle does have value. And we're in a position where that value needs defending. We try to change our bodies for reasons that are inexorably cultural and political, meaning that resistance or refusal is a politically significant act. The pressures to modify are so intense, so pervasive, that having a completely unmodified body is virtually impossible. We face overwhelming requirements to modify our bodies to conceal the realities of aging, to disguise the distinctive features of disability and disfigurement, to perfect our complexion or waistline or muscle tone, to conform to gendered and racialized standards of beauty or even just acceptability. In this context, refusing to modify can be an act of rebellion. Now, the second obvious objection to my claim that we should value the unmodified body says some bodies need changing. Some bodies, this objection says, are deficient in some way. They are left unhealthy by poor diet or inadequate exercise. They suffer from disease or disability. They fail to meet the standards of normal functioning. In these cases, so this objection goes, body modification is to be recommended. It is an entitlement or even a duty. In response to this challenge, I argue in Intact that even notions of health and disability are strongly shaped by politics, by social norms, by cultural context, by structures of power and oppression. It's true that some bodies, all bodies in fact, have limitations, impose constraints, fail to flourish. Where we can make our bodies work better for us, of course we should. But the pressures to modify often outweigh the potential for success. The standards imposed on our bodies cannot be met because inadequacy is built in. Asserting the value of the unmodified body is a necessary corrective. Another way of putting this point is to say that the real culprit is not the act of body modification itself, but the pressure to modify. So Intact is an attempt to show that the unmodified body should be understood as something real and something valuable. In some ways, this is an intuitive position, leaving our bodies as they are, being content with them as they are, even being grateful for them and positive about them. All these dispositions seem attractive and virtuous. And we should treat our bodies as a temple. We should be as nature made us. We should embrace body positivity. But this intuition will resonate more with some people than with others. Some people will not see the appeal of this idea. They see their bodies as a blank canvas, something to be worked on, something to be shaped and sculpted to their own desires. And it's certainly true that not all modifications are suspect. Body modification can be an act of creativity, a kind of rebellion, an expression of individuality. Body modification can also be pursued in search of other valuable goods, health, happiness, wealth. It can be an act of virtue, of caring for ourselves, making an effort. And it can simply be an expression of freedom. In general, we should allow people to make their own choices about things that primarily affect them, like their bodies, even while we try to change the oppressive political conditions that shape our choices. But a large amount of modification is not unfettered creativity, nor is it health and happiness affirming. It is undertaken from shame, or so as to fit in, or so as to escape discrimination. It is never-ending, can never be complete, will never allow satisfaction. It requires conformity, docility, self-harm. And we do not choose it in a vacuum. We choose it because it makes sense in our cultural context. We're encouraged to do it to feel good, required to do it to fit in, subtly and not so subtly. The conditions that shape our choices are laid down by others. Okay, now that's the end of the reading from Intact, and I'm going to move now to think about the philosophy of freedom and connect that at the end to those remarks on the body. So the philosophy of choice and the philosophy of freedom. Well, in this part of my talk, I'm going to focus on two political philosophies that prioritize freedom, liberalism and feminism. Now, liberal freedom is a property of individuals. For liberals, freedom is not amply secured if it is a property merely of groups. Individuals must always be free to dissent. And freedom can be understood in a minimal or a maximal way. It requires, at the very least, in a minimal sense, a measure of protection against coercion, paradigmatically by the state or other powerful individuals. More extensive conceptions of freedom also call for the individual to have resources. These may be intellectual or mental capacities of choice, or they may be material resources to enable individuals to put desire into action. And most liberals prioritize individual choice as a measure of freedom. However, as feminist theory shows, individual choice is insufficient as an account of freedom. As we can see in the case of body modification, people often choose things that harm or disadvantage them or that respond to structures of inequality. This harm may be social, as when individuals choose to comply with practices that enforce or inscribe inequality, or it may be material harm when individuals choose practices that cause physical harm to their bodies or that are costly in resource terms. Often these choices are made in response to social norms, and so it follows that relying merely on individual choice as a measure of freedom leaves unjust social structures intact. So a defender of freedom must be prepared to criticize individuals' choices while at the same time prioritizing individual choosers, right? So it's the chooser versus the choice that is the issue here. Feminism also insists on the significance of freedom, as evident in the fact that many feminists saw their goal as women's liberation. Right? And liberation means freedom from oppression, subordination, restrictive roles, violence, oppression. Women must be liberated from the constraints imposed by what is variously described as gender inequality, male supremacy, patriarchy, or just plain sexism. These constraints are material, they are legal, they are social, and they are symbolic. So liberalism and feminism share a commitment to freedom. So what then distinguishes them? Well, one difference is their understanding of how it is that freedom is thwarted in actually existing imperfect societies. What is it that prevents us, collectively and individually, from enjoying the freedom to which we are entitled? Well, liberals have typically placed the answer in the state, defending forms of government or legislative change that can enhance our freedom and equality. Thus, liberals defend institutions such as democracy, the separation of powers, written constitutions, and the like. They advocate legislation against discrimination, the creation of a welfare state and public services, an economy that creates both market freedoms and redistributive taxation to protect the poor. Feminists observe that such instruments, even if necessary for individual freedom, have not been sufficient. Feminists note that freedom and equality are gendered, and that liberal institutions have played out differently for men and for women. Women as a group systematically fare worse than men as a group, including in those times and places characterized by a shared commitment to liberalism. What this means, feminists point out, is that liberal theory and practice has not secured freedom for women. And what's more, many liberal theorists and regimes have failed to notice. They've neither noticed nor cared about this gender inequality. And this deficiency, then, seems to be a deficiency of liberal theory. So in my own work, I've tried to identify where liberalism goes wrong from a feminist perspective, and to ask whether there can be a form of liberal feminism or feminist liberalism that combines the insights of both doctrines. And I argue that one way that liberalism goes wrong when thinking about freedom is that it treats choice as what I call a normative transformer. So a normative transformer is something that transforms the normative value of some act from bad to good, usually, from unjust to just. Consent is a paradigmatic example of a normative transformer. Consent transforms rape into sex, theft into gift-giving, violence into sport. And choice is another paradigmatic example of a normative transformer in respect to body modification. Choice is what transforms surgery, tattoos, and medical treatment from assault and battery and bodily harm into a service that people want or may even be entitled to. So I want to critique this idea that choice is a normative transformer, but why would I want to do that? What's wrong with thinking about it in that way? Doesn't a commitment to liberty, to freedom, entail a commitment to valuing and respecting people's choices? To an extent, yes. But what feminists are keenly aware of, and liberals tend to ignore, is that we don't make our choices in a vacuum. We choose within the constraints of our society. So our choices then are socially constructed in two main ways that undermine their use as a normative transformer, as a measure of our freedom. First, we can only choose from the options that are available to us. We cannot choose to be opera singers if our society doesn't have the cultural form of opera. Right? We can't choose to have buttock enlargements if that technology has not yet emerged in our society. And moreover, the options that are presented to us in our society are very often pre-sorted into those that are designated appropriate for us and those that are not. So, for example, in the UK, opera is characterized as an art form that is appropriately connected to the middle and upper classes. People from working class backgrounds are unlikely to either encounter it or to experience it as appropriate for them, maintaining that class inequality. To take another example, makeup is strongly gendered, meaning that women and girls absorb the message that for them makeup is appropriate or even expected. Boys and men absorb the message that for them it's taboo or odd, and consequently there's a gendered pattern in who chooses to wear makeup. So these choices may be free in the sense of being uncoerced, and they may also be genuine choices in the sense that they may be identified with. Right? But they are socially constructed nonetheless. And the second way that our choices are socially constructed is through our preferences. Generally, we want to be accepted and praised by others, right? We have a social characteristic. We want to fit in socially. We want to do what gives us social status, social esteem, and social acceptability. And so over time, as part of this inherently social nature, we tend to take pleasure in doing things that are expected of us and that get us that social acceptance. Take fashion, right, as an example. So often if you look back at what you wore, depending on how fashionable you are, was it last season, last decade, last year, you might see yourself in an outfit and think, why did I wear that? That looks terrible to me now, right? When a new fashion comes in, maybe it looks strange to begin with, you maybe wear it to sort of fit in, but over time your preferences change, your tastes change, and that new shape, that new look, looks good to you too. So our preferences shift in response to social acceptability. And so when a context is highly gendered, as all liberal societies are, it's not surprising that women and men make different choices. Certain choices are socially cast as appropriate for women and for men, and men and women consequently form different preferences. Now, this is not a false consciousness argument. Choices to conform can very often be rational within a gendered system that rewards us for conformity or punishes us for doing differently. We might be painfully aware of the injustice of gender norms and other norms of appearance in our bodies, and yet correctly assess that we will be better off if we comply. So this is not an argument that people are making foolish or irrational decisions. It's an argument about the context in which we choose. The problem is not that people are making the wrong choices. The problem is that we are choosing within a context of injustice. Okay, now just to close, I'm going to return to the specific example of the body. There's a really wonderful song by Rachel Lark and the Damaged Goods that I really encourage you to look up on YouTube, and it's called I Want to Lose 5 Pounds. I'm not going to sing it for you, I'm going to read you a little bit of the lyrics. All the other women should love their bodies, but I want to lose 5 pounds. I'm not talking anything crazy. I just want to shed some belly fat and slim down. I'm doing this for me, and I'm proud to say self-love is making me feel this way. I need healthy habits, and I really should eat more veggies and be more good. I'm aware that our society tricks healthy women into dieting, but that's not what this thing's about. See, I just want to look cuter when I'm going out. So all the other women should love their bodies, but I want to lose 5 pounds. So look that up on YouTube. It's a brilliant video. And this is a kind of parody, right, of the body positivity movement, right? The body positivity movement urges us to reject the constant feeling of dissatisfaction in favor of loving ourselves, seeing ourselves as beautiful regardless of how our bodies are. And that's a good thing, right? But it suggests that the problem is primarily one of individual self-esteem, or even of individuals choosing whether or not to love themselves. It suggests it's up to us to choose to be beautiful, to choose to value our bodies. It obscures the political and economic structures that set us up to feel bad. It privatizes a political problem. So now you can feel bad about your body, and you can also feel bad about feeling bad about your body. Now, the body positivity movement is not all bad, not at all. Deliberate measures to cultivate good body image can work to an extent. It's certainly better, body positivity, than body negativity. But the body positivity movement is not without its problems, and it's ironically been used by major beauty brands. Most prominent among them is Dove. You may have seen its campaign for real beauty, as they call it. And Dove has really commandeered the use of body positivity as a marketing tool. And some of its work is evidence-based and to be applauded, but not all of that work. So, in 2015, Dove ran a Choose Beautiful, that was the name, Choose Beautiful campaign. So again, connecting us to the idea of freedom and choice. And this campaign ran in 5 cities around the world, and there were large signs reading either beautiful or average, placed above doors in major public buildings like railway stations and the like. So anybody entering the building had to choose whether to go through the sign marked beautiful or the door marked average. And Dove released a video showing women making these choices and then discussing it to camera afterwards. I went through the average door, says one woman. "Really?" says her friend. "Yep, I didn't even hesitate," she replies. Another woman describes her decision straight to camera. "Every day I go through the average door, but yesterday was a unique day, so I chose to go through the beautiful one." And she looks elated. Several parts of the video show one woman pushing another through the beautiful door, including a mother and a daughter, and a woman literally being pushed in a wheelchair through the beautiful door. And the video closes with women and girls triumphantly choosing the beautiful door and the hashtag #ChooseBeautiful. Now, this video is meant as a celebration of individuality, of body positivity, of the choice, the freedom to call oneself beautiful. But in reality, it just replicates the same old tropes. All the people depicted making the choice are women. No men are shown confronting how they appear to others and agonizing over this choice to camera. All the women, none of the women are fat. No women are, decidedly contrary to images of acceptable bodies. So despite its supposedly empowering aim, this choice between beautiful and average forces women to rank themselves against each other. And of course, not everyone can be beautiful if beautiful means not average. If everyone is beautiful, then beautiful and average are the same thing anyway. And this nonsensical choice replicates the beauty ideal. Every woman is expected to be beautiful, but universal beauty is impossible because it's ranked, right? Not everyone can be beautiful. Now, my favorite part of that video passes without commentary or explanation. It shows a woman arriving at the building, seeing the signs, frowning, and then turning and walking away. All right, my closing remark. So in Tact, I show how the pressures to modify our bodies are overwhelming, how they reflect and reinforce structures of domination and oppression, how they undermine the basic equality that we should all share. My aim is not to demonize modification. All of us have little choice but to modify our bodies in some way or other. And the pressures to modify are more, the more our bodies are deemed inferior. And there is no justification then for ranking bodies on the basis of how unmodified they manage to be. Instead, I show the political role of the pressure to modify and the urgent need for collective action to resist it. So choice is important, but choice is not everything. We do not choose our social context. We do not choose how our gender is understood and enforced. We do not choose the content of the beauty ideal. We do not choose to be on the receiving end of an endless barrage of images of the perfect body. We do not choose the judgment, the appraisal, the comments on our appearance and the assumptions made about our identity. We do not choose to live in a world where we are constantly receiving the message that how we look is one of, if not the most important things about us. We live in a society that is becoming ever more visual, ever more focused on how we look. Our appearance becomes a measure of our value. Our bodies become an indication of our character. There's no flaw that cannot be fixed, no limit to the project of self-improvement, no body that is good enough. And it is time to say, stop. It is time to allow our bodies to be good enough. It's time to recognize that when virtually everybody feels bad about their bodies, the bodies are not the real problem. It's time to reclaim the value of the unmodified body. It's time to let our bodies, ourselves, be whole, intact. Thank you.